the kitchen, get a drink, go back, relax, you know.
Yeah, what's missing there? What's the word for that?
Freedom.
Freedom. Loss of freedom. You know, not everybody that goes to jail considers it a loss of freedom. Some people consider it home. And in fact, when they get out of jail, they get all nervous about having too many options and no structure. This is a psychological phenomenon that's been demonstrated over and over again, particularly the long-term convict. Prison is freaking home. He knows how it works. He knows what to expect. He's used to the structure. It gives him some comfort. They let him out and he's all nervous and twitchy and he commits some petty crime just to get back in. It's a documented phenomenon. Is that depression? Well, it's certainly not depression in his case. It's anxiety because he's out, right? Does prison cause depression? Is prison the circumstance that we're talking about? Can you measure that circumstance independent of the person who gives it meaning?
Yeah.
You cannot. That's why you have two diametrically different responses. Somebody actually gets anxious and depressed when you take them out of prison. The other person gets depressed when you put them in prison. If you're the kind of person when you get put in prison and it turns out whether you knew it or not, your freedom means everything to you, then you've lost your freedom. Why do we need the word depressed? You're having this very sad, very hopeless response to the loss of something that's very critical. Why don't we call that grief? You have prison grief. Prison caused grief. That's not too much of a stretch, is it?
No.
You see, what happens is we make up a word like depression to describe a condition with no understanding of the context from which it comes. Don't you want to get out of your parents' house? Now, it's not a prison, is it?
No.
That's not really fair. I mean, you know, we could say that and just don't tell mom and dad. It feels a little bit like that, whatever. The warden's minding your business and restricting your freedom. And you push back a little bit, so, I mean, what are they going to do, put you in solitary confinement?
Yeah.
But isn't that what timeout is? You're in timeout, solitary confinement. Right? Go to your room. You know, if you send a kid to his room and he's got all his toys in there, is that really timeout?
No.
No, hours later you're saying, come out of your room. No, I don't feel like it. It's like, no, that didn't work. You know, it's in the meaning of the experience that you know the condition is produced, not the condition determines the meaning of the experience. Does that make sense? It's
Yes.
the meaning that matters. It's not the circumstances separate from what we say those circumstances mean. Somebody else might think, you know, you got it really cushy and they love to live there. A little nuisance factor with your mom yapping at you or whatever, but you put up with that because, you know, you get free food and they pay for your car insurance, you know, whatever it is. I don't know what the perks are, right? You don't have to pay rent, right?
I'd have switched.
What do you mean?
I'd have switched for her life for mine.
Okay. So, you have depression?
No.
Well, of course you do.
I have the symptoms.
You have all the symptoms, right? And you've had them for quite some time. And since you've had it for so long, as your circumstances have come and gone, your condition has persisted. So it makes sense without people really thinking this thing through that they would say, looks like you have a depression because the circumstances don't seem to matter. And that would be the endogenous kind of depression. So now we're looking for the disturbed neurochemistry and we're going to treat it with some sort of pill. And they're still looking for the one that works. Yeah, it doesn't work. Doesn't work. Because I'd like to suggest that in fact it's the circumstances and the meaning of the circumstances that are creating this. But nobody but you could actually see the link. Nobody but you can see the link. What have you lost over the past 15 years? Yeah. Now, as you lost them, did that make you depressed, or did your depression make them go away? Well, that's one of those things you could sort of see chicken and egg coming together there, right? I'm not interested in them. I'm too depressed. I don't call them. They get upset, or they give up and they leave, right? So my depression caused them to leave. We could argue that. But you could also argue that they started leaving, which led you to be depressed, right? Including the marriage. And maybe most importantly, the marriage. But you've lost other people. And, when we talk about your history, right? So we figured out, or you figured out in your 40s, some pieces of your history that have been buried. Well, okay, nobody sitting with you prior to that trying to analyze your depression would have known. Like, what are you talking about? You got a decent life. I don't get it. Things looking good. And you yourself would say, well, I guess you're right. Give me a better pill, right? And then one day, bing, you get this recollection about some trauma. Like, holy shit! Important piece of information that had been lost. Right? It throws the whole explanation on its head. There was a circumstance. There was a response to a meaningful circumstance. It was a horrible circumstance. You defended against it, right? Understandably. But it kept like radiating depression from behind the wall. Behind your defensive wall. Now it makes sense. No wonder I was depressed, right? So our failure to see the connection leads us to draw this conclusion that there are these mysterious depressions that come out of nowhere. And I'm suggesting that never happens. That's pretty radical what I'm saying. That never happens. That there are always meaningful circumstances at the root of what we end up calling depression. And it's actually the appropriate response, or some form of appropriateness to the response. If that meaningful circumstance had existed in my life or anybody else's life, we'd feel the same way, or relatively the same way. Some of us might get more angry, some of us might get more defeated, some of us might get more sad, but we would all have a serious objection to those meaningful circumstances. And I won't disclose what they are, but you know what we're talking about. So you're a mystery to yourself. So you go in, you get treated for depression, you have a depression, you can't explain it, because those circumstances and the meaning of those circumstances you had defensively hidden from yourself. Which is, understandable for a child to respond to that kind of trauma that way. I'm not sure that isn't true of you too. Now you see the collection of difficulties here in figuring that out, not the least of which was the ECT treatments, which mess with your ability to remember. Now you're just a depressed person for the rest of your life, and let's keep looking for the pill. Why bother doing anything about your circumstances? And now the depression accounts for the fact that your circumstances have continued to deteriorate. So we're now making the result of something the cause of everything else. We have it ass backwards. Now, because of the repression and because of the memory damage, the challenge exists. We can't just sort of casually search for the explanation. We got to really look. You stumbled upon yours, right? Accidentally in the class that you had. We gotta go on some sort of hunt. By the way, did I suggest hypnosis to you? I'm suggesting hypnosis because it could sort of bypass some subconscious blocking of memories. We might be able to get to something there. On the other hand, given the number of treatments you had, maybe the cells are fried and there's nothing for us to, we won't ever find it. But for me, that doesn't mean there isn't something there. So the category mistake we've all made is we look at the condition as if it's the cause of itself. And frankly, I'm pretty convinced that the pharmaceutical industry wants us to continue to think that way. You know how much money they make off the sale of antidepressants?
Tons.
And so many people out here in that large 70% group who are not really having much of a positive result to show from their use of the medication continue to search for the right one. And maybe it's all fruitless. It's kind of like if you didn't make it into the placebo group in the first place, you're probably not going to make it. You're actually going to think your side effects are nasty side effects. They're not going to convince you that, in fact, look, it's having a... So this is good news, isn't it? You don't think so? We could start looking in earnest for the real source of your depression. It is good news. Yeah. Well, let's stop sitting around just assuming I'm stuck with this because of my genetics or my neurochemistry. And all right, what are we going to try this week? I hope it works. We go on a search for the meaningful circumstances that might be generating the sense of sadness. How do you feel about crying?
Not good. I'm
You don't-
good.
Well, you don't like it, right? I mean, we're getting you to like it a little bit more, tolerate it more. You don't like it. So think about all the circumstances involving loss and grief and hurt for you that just kind of piled up. And then, amazing, you find yourself depressed one day. And it could have been a day that had no negative things happening, circumstance-wise. So why do I feel depressed today? Because my dog died last week. How long should we grieve a dog? There's a $64 million question. How long should we grieve any loss?
As long as it takes.
Well, you're suggesting it could go on forever?
For some people.
Yeah. What about time heals all wounds?
Crap.
It's crap, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, even as a nurse, you understand, if I have a wound and I don't take care of it, time could cause it to get infected, and next thing you know, it turns into gangrene, and, I could die from it. Well, I was letting time pass. I was expecting it to heal. Did you ever wash it? Did you ever get it looked at? No, I was just waiting for time to heal it. The same is true in the psychological or emotional realm. Time passes, my father's still dead. Time passes, my father's still dead. And I'm still not okay with it. Well, I don't feel as bad on a daily basis as I did that first month. That was bad. So, time was sort of working, because the second month I felt better. But I plateaued and I stayed stuck until I actually took care of the wound, which meant deal with the grief. I can see this conversation is cheering everybody up.
We'll be all depressed by the time you got.
Heard any good depression jokes lately? That's not funny. So you're getting the point. My premise is that we could go on a process of discovery, and I can't guarantee 100% of the time because of situations like our friend there, because the memory may not work. And if we had gone on this, conscious, dialogue kind of discovery process with you when you were 35, we might not have gotten anywhere, right? Because it was effectively repressed, wasn't accessible. So it's not like you're not telling the truth. You're telling the truth as you understand it. The other part of the truth lived in a blind spot.